the gears are turning in their minds. We get off the call. All right, Ryan, we'll let you know. The next day, how do we move forward? 5K right there. I don't know these guys. I talked to them for 30 minutes. They asked me about what I'm doing. I said, I'm in my parents' garage. I'm running this company. I'm trying to help people launch podcasts, right? They trusted me because of my story, because of my energy, because of questions that I asked. That is possible. And you could do that every single day, right?
This video is sponsored by Suns. Suns are a men's healthcare brand that offer clinically proven, licensed hair loss treatment for less than the cost of a coffee every day. Follow the link in the description and use the code KickoffSessions40 to avail of 40% off your first order. All right, bro, let's kick off. I'm very excited for this. At the end of the week, after a long ass fucking week, many sessions recorded, I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be chill and yeah, it's going to be sick.
Man, I can't wait.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. So let's start really with some of your background, right? So I've been on your podcast, which was sick, and it was a really good opportunity to go deep on kind of that. And then I learned, as we mentioned earlier, that you're 23 years old, man, and you've been pushing so hard. Like when I was 23, I was just out getting pissed all the time. I was just thinking about my next vacation, thinking about just going out, thinking about traveling, you know. But you've been super, super focused, man, on that for so long. How has it been? Like, how is it for you on a daily basis?
Yeah, I want to say thanks for coming on my podcast too. I really do appreciate that. Fantastic interview there. Really got into some great topics. But yeah, I've been like I said off camera, man. I really just didn't. I don't feel like I sacrificed a lot. I just feel like I just have been doing what I wanted to do. Like that's all. Like you can look at it like, oh, I missed out on enjoying myself or partying or stuff like that. Like I did all that in high school. I was the person, like me and my friend group in high school were like the ones who like, if there was no party at because our school was so small. So there was like, we would have to throw the parties. And if there wasn't one, then we would go to a different high school and go party with them and until we got kicked out or whatever. Like I got all that out when I was 16, 17, and all my friends were older than me. So they would drive me around. So like it did. So I basically had like years of just not doing whatever I want, getting high every day, going to school high, like, partying on the weekends, like all that stuff. Like I got all that out. So then when I come to graduation, when most of my friends go away to college, now I'm here by myself. I've never been alone, just me without my support network, right? Of people to be like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? So that was a pretty big shift. And I really see that as a pretty pivotal moment where I could have gone one to two ways. Like I could have wasted a lot of time with people that are really good people, but just really were just wasting time. Or I could have gone on this solo journey mission to figure out me. And so that's the direction I went. Thank God. Because of the Joe Rogan experience, because of Sam Harris, because of Tim Ferriss, because of all of these great minds that I had access to. And I said this on a podcast that I'm releasing on Monday. And I'm like, I don't look like my Netflix is podcasts. Like my Netflix is listening and watching podcasts. Like when I think about how am I going to relax, like people, like I think about pouring a little glass of whiskey, like I don't even do On the Rocks anymore, man, just straight. And I just listen to or watch a podcast about aliens or something. Like that's my relaxation. Like I don't need to go out. I don't need a party. I can just be in with my girlfriend. Like maybe I'll convince her to watch a podcast, or if I'm with her, take it easy, or I'll watch a movie. But I don't watch movies on my own. I literally listen to music and I watch podcasts. But I've been doing this for 5 years now. So like I don't have, that is my downtime. My downtime's also related to the thing that I do every day, every week, which is helping people start podcasts and my own podcast. So it's really been like I went down the personal mission route. I'm not saying it's better because it's the ins and outs.
At the end of the day, yeah.
Exactly. Like everybody, I just don't feel like I sacrificed this large amount of time or anything like that. And I also feel like I've done way less than I've done I think, because everybody will tell me that I've done all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't look at
Yeah,
it how you look at it, right?
I
So,
get you, man. But you know what's interesting there is the fact that like I think everyone has those moments whereby they're young, dumb, getting up to stupid shit, and usually people lean on it as a crutch. Like they just use it as, oh, fall back, a kind of like pattern behavior mindset. So like when you did it when you're 16, 17, 18, it was fine. For you and for me, I was slightly older, probably 22, 23. I was getting it out of my system. So at that point, then I was partying a bit, but I was still getting things around and trying to
mhm,
get things done. And then I figured out, okay, this is what I want to do. And a lot of people will use this younger element of, just sticking with it. And I think what's very interesting here, right, is if you ever analyze when people come out of university or come out of school, there's a certain amount of people that will always hang on to the school mentality. They'll always hang on to, when they're in high school or when they finish university and they hang on to university. Some of them even hang around the university parties. When for me, and sounds like for you, that, you just cut it. You say, that was great experience. What's the next thing? And move
mhm.
on to the next thing. And you were very lucky to find your kind of quote unquote passion. But for a lot of people, it's just about trying new shit, doing new shit, getting out there, getting a feel of the world. But if you turn that off, and if you don't let yourself commit to it, you're going to be 28, 29, man, smoking weed, drinking, taking drugs, doing all the stupid shit with less opportunity, less money, less everything.
Yeah, a friend of mine said, like, when you went away to college, because I went to community college for 2 years, went away to college for 2.5 years after. He said, when you went away to college, you were already set. Like, he was, like, basically trying to tell me that I already got through the college, you know, blow your, whatever, all your time on partying mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas I did, because I had 2 years of downtime to figure myself out, whereas people went right from high school right into the partying, right into the shit, right?
Mhm.
And so when I got to college, I was meal prepping every meal. I was training on a schedule, I didn't have everything dialed in, but I had 2 years of meditation consistently, right? Like, not 2 full years of meditation, but learning that, reading 4-hour work week, all these different things. I went there with a mindset that usually doesn't come till you have some sort of awakening of like, holy shit, I'm still doing my college habits, right? And that
Or
doesn't
or you hate your
or
job so much. That's the
or you
biggest
hate
thing.
jobs. Yeah, exactly. So, and I never had a job that I hated, right? So I always had jobs that I enjoyed. So my mindset was I could always get a job that fits me, because I've always, not every job was perfect, but I never had a job where I really despised it. And so I that would never have been an option for me
Mm.
to go either of those routes, the job that sucks for the money or the part of your life away. I was already on a good path when I got to a university. So any temptation, I remember going to one party, man, and I was there, or I might have went to, like, I think I went to 2. I went to 2. And, no, I went to one fraternity meeting, and then I went to, like, I was kidding myself, dude. Why was I even wasting my time? But I went to one fraternity meeting and I went to one party. The fraternity meeting was just guys, like, he was like, "This is a personal," and he's smoking a whole blunt down to, by himself, and I'm like, "All right, these are not my people, man." Like, I'm out of my element. And then I went to one party and I lasted like 25 minutes, and I'm like, Everybody here is no, but there's nobody here I can have a real conversation with." And
Yeah.
no, I know a lot of those guys and I like a lot of those guys, but you know, different
And
levels, right?
and man, let's actually chat about that in terms of like influences. Like, so for what you're doing now, what has been some of like the biggest influences? I know you mentioned like Joe Rogan and the Tim Ferriss for this, but for me, like there's the who influences me and who definitely doesn't influence me. And I've had those conversations when I was younger too. Like I remember just sitting around like 7 a.m. sessions or whatever and looking around and just being like, I am nowhere like similar to these people at all.
No.
Not saying that I'm superior in any way, not at all, right? But what I'm trying to say is that we just don't have similarities.
Mhm.
So for me to do things that aren't aligned to who I am, my interests, my hobbies, what I want to do, where I want to go to my career, it's just a direct misalignment. Whereas for me, like I was that fucking dude, man, that was listening to Tim Ferriss podcast. I remember I was always telling my roommates, and they were like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
There's no way they could, sorry to jump in, but like that experience of trying, like my friends haven't gone Tim Ferriss. That's way too far for them. They've done Joe Rogan in the last few
Mhm.
years, and they're understanding that, and they're telling me, "Have you seen this, dude? I've seen all of them." Right? So like I feel you exactly what you're saying. It's like
Mhm.
you haven't reached the level. It's okay. It takes a while.
But even at that, it was like, you're the kind of weirdo that's listening to those types of things. And I remember one of the first and I know this isn't just about a podcasting like podcast, but one of the biggest kind of influences around that was what is that what is that plugin that's with Shopify? Is it not Survey Monkey? Something Monkey, the one that does all the email lists. Yeah,
MailChimp.
Mailchimp. One of the first podcasts I ever listened to that really changed my mind on just like drive and determination and just like getting shit done. And this was mainly about getting shit done. Was listening to, I think it was him and
Yeah,
SaaS company.
I forget his name, but I've definitely listened to that one too.
He was working as an accountant, I think. Okay, I'm gonna fuck this up, but this is my analogy of anyway. This is my explanation. He's working as an accountant. He hated his life. I was working for a company at the time, which I hated as well. And he came home and he did that moonlight shift. So he'd come back, smash some food, go to the gym, work 6 to 2. He did it for so long. He just kept on going. And he said that like when the sales started coming in, and this is when he got so like into it. And man, for me, like even like now, like I actually get like tingles when I think about this stuff. I'm so fascinated by how someone can just build something and people will just pay for it, and it's in the world, and it has value for people and people enjoy it and they're leaving good reviews. Like that to me is just like what like drives me 24/7, like every single day. And that's what my influences are. It's not the fact that I just look at a single person or a single, fintech influencer or social media influencer or whatever. It's just this kind of concoction of what can be produced when you just commit to something. And you put discipline, you put order, you put a bit of chaos in there too. And that's what you can get from it.
And online, who knows who's doing what, right? Think about LinkedIn, dude. Think about the gurus. Think about the people who know that they think they're a guru, but don't say it, but they think they are. And because they have a following, because they're good at building a following, there's so many people giving advice on things that we have no idea if they're actually doing these things. We have no clue. The only ones that are real are the ones that are that, right? And one that comes to mind for me is the founder of CD Baby. Are you familiar with CD Baby? Are you familiar with DistroKid or
No,
any
no,
of these?
no.
So CD Baby, so this is if you right now, Darren Lee, I'm a rapper. I'm gonna release a song, right? You would go to CD Baby or DistroKid or one of these. It's basically a distributor. So whatever you use for your podcast, it's the same thing for music, right? So whatever
Okay.
that brings it to all the platforms. The founder of CD Baby, he couldn't figure out how to. He needed. There was like gatekeepers, right? And to get his CD on the internet. This was like back when this was like 96 or something like that. So he's like, why don't I just figure out how to get it on the internet? He got his CD on the internet, dude. And other bands were like, how'd you get your CD on the internet? He's like, I just did it myself. They're like, what? They're like, can you do it for us? Right. Similar to the MailChimp scenario. It's just, I created this thing and then it started coming and growing and growing. Those stories are the ones that, similar to what you took
Mm.
away from that story, those stories are the ones that I resonate with. So now down the line, when you're creating content on LinkedIn every day, I'm creating content on Instagram and LinkedIn every day, right? I can see through a lot of it. Like I know if you don't have a MailChimp, CD Baby, acquisition.com, Alex Ramosi, micro acquire, any of these guys, if you don't have this story, then if the lack of the context leads me to believe like this is just something you're doing for a following, right? And
Yeah.
so when you talk influences, there's a lot of kind of McDonald's influences, right? There's a lot of McDonald's influencers out there, but the MailChimps and the CD Baby guys, those are a freaking, tomahawk steak, man, with like just the asparagus on the side, you know, but it takes a while to learn those lessons from them because you got to sit there and listen to the whole story and figure out how they
Mhm.
built it and all that stuff. So when you mention like influencers and influences, there's a lot of McDonald's guys out there. They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. They've built a following. It looks really good, right? It looks
Mm.
really good, but there's people that are behind the scenes that don't post every day who are real masters who once in a while come out on a podcast and actually talk about it. And you even see like the Chris Walkers of the LinkedIn world, right? These are influencers. They didn't build their business off of LinkedIn. They
Mhm.
didn't. They didn't. Like 100%. I know like they like just him for an example. I'm not bashing him at all. I'm just saying like there's LinkedIn here, and then there's business. And you can get zoomed in on these little facets on like you might be in the LinkedIn community now, but that's 0.000000001 of the bigger picture, or
Mhm.
in the Instagram community. Like these guys just figured out a lane and stuck with it, right? And some of them are legit, some of them are not, but like it's really that the stories of the MailChimps and CD Babies, to come back to that to wrap it up, like those are the ones that I also have really taken a lot more value from. Like if I just see your
Mhm.
LinkedIn post of how you grew this thing, like it's kind of obvious to us now since we've seen so many, the ones that are like those 10-year
Yeah.
stories and the ones that are just built to follow.
Exactly, man. Because I think it's like those ones, like the micro acquire. So if anyone doesn't know, this guy Andrew Gazecki, I forget his surname. He wrote a great article on yourself, which we're going to get into in a while as well. You know, these guys are just like startup founders who are just hungry as fuck, who are literally just in a basement that's literally like 200 quid a month, and they're just like building software. And I think when it gets to something like software in particular, which is something that I'm, you know, I work in product, I work in startups. Well, it's a scale up, I would say, but you know, there's so much time that needs to go into the building, like the actual building aspect of tech stack, UI, front end, customer experience, all that kind of stuff, right? That as a result, you can't be on these platforms talking shit. However, for service based companies or operations like what we do, right, on the side, so if we're doing consulting, coaching, all in one packages, agency packages, and stuff like this, you do and you don't need to have that forefront. There's two models. There's the
Mhm.
agency model whereby, as we discussed before, you're getting a shitload of emails and you're just outbound, or you do kind of what I do, which is more LinkedIn side of it, and then you look for inbound opportunities. But and it's not about the grass is always, you know, it's not about like the grass is always greener. Like I look at this context sometimes and I'm like, oh, is there something else I could be doing, whatever? And you know, there's always that to and fro.
Mhm.
But you know, to wrap up on this point, I just think that like, you know, when you do see someone who's a service-based business, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's successful. To your point, there is no fucking hiding behind software. And if someone releases a startup or releases a SaaS product, you can go on and just check it out. You can see if it's shit. You can see if there's no reviews. You know, so that's why like tech companies don't get away with it as much, I think. Whereas you can be a, you know, a quote unquote entrepreneur and sell shit on the internet and make no sales, because making sales is hard, man, and getting clients, things like this is very tough, man. So even do you
Mhm.
want to speak about that a small bit in terms of like how you started podcast principles and like
Mhm.
what are some of the struggles you had in the beginning?
Yeah, so I started this business, so to say. I'm still a freelancer. I don't have an LLC. Like I'm still verifying my concept. And so I put a name to it, right? Like I call it podcast principles. There's a concept behind it. We have a system. We have everything, right? But we're still in that. I still see us in uh kind of towards the end of dialing in the entirety of our business and our offer. And that's where we are now. But if we take it back, look at February 2020, I leave my startup marketing job. It was a job that it was the first podcast I did for somebody else. They didn't understand content. They sent 3,000 cold emails a week because they had no client retention, and they would get a $30,000 contract, live on that, blow it after 6 months, basically delivered barely any of the results that they guaranteed, and then they would send 3,000 more cold emails and grab somebody else, right? And so it went bankrupt, thank God, right? They had to restart the bit. Thank God. But this was a great learning experience for me because they were like, "Hey, come in and make content." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll do everything for the podcast." And then I'm like, "I'm doing the podcast, but you're posting it to a page that has botted followers. Like nobody's seeing this, nobody's engaging. Just send more cold emails, right? Like the podcast idea was great, but there was no execution because the belief system wasn't there in terms of what organic content can do. So I left that. They put me on sales. They're like, "You're done with the podcast. It's not working. Go on sales." Okay, cool.
Bear in
So
mind, like
now
a podcast is such a long-term game. Like, isn't the benefit you get are direct, maybe, which is like, you're advertising whatever, or indirect, which is the opportunities you build and the relation. It's not, you can't
you
really
can have
measure it.
you can have 10 listeners and be one of the most successful podcasts in the world on paper because you sold $1.7 billion worth of services to 6 of those people, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not about downloads. It's about like what you're saying. It's about what you're doing with it. The podcast itself is just an entity, but it's about how you're leveraging it, right? So they didn't leverage it. I could have, but once again, do sales, make us money. Podcasts don't make us money, right? So I leave that job. Good opportunity. I learned how not to run a digital business, how to run one. I was talking to somebody today. They're like, I'm talking to them about cold email. And they're like, "Don't you need help?" I'm like, "Dude, I do know that." It's like this company was successful in closing people off of cold emails. Like that was a success. The company was terrible, but that strategy works. So I take that. I always have that. I always know how to use Gmailius and set up sequences and all that stuff. So there's a ton of game that I took. And then funny enough, I missed some emails one day. I got burnt out from this company and they were like, "You got to talk to this life coach because you're going out of control," or something like that. Cause I slept in. So I was like, okay. So I talked to the guy, get to the end of the call. The company paid for this call. And then he says, "Hey man, I think you got to do music and podcasts. I think you got to do your own thing." And I go, "You know what, Tim? I agree with you. I'm going to quit this job." So that backfired too. There's a lot that backfired in this company. They basically taught me how to do a bunch of stuff, paid for me to learn all of it, and then paid for me to leave. It was like
That's
couldn't
so
have been
funny,
better.
man.
And people would say like, "Oh, the company was so bad, the leadership was so bad." I'm like, "Yeah, like it's sometimes it's better to do a not to do list than a to do list, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to know what not to do."
Was that
And
in New York as well?
that was in New York, yeah. So I worked for 30 days in person, 4-hour commute, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, car to bus to walking. So it
Oh
was
my God.
5 in the morning, get up at 4:35, get on the bus by 6:30. That's a 1 hour and 20-minute bus ride with no traffic. Then you get to Port Authority and a 30-minute walk to the office, right? And I'm talking Park Ave, Manhattan. This shit is legit, dude. Like I think I'm balling. I'm up there on a rooftop, like follow your dreams, man. Like, working for this terrible company. But I thought it was great. I was having a great time. Cause like the founder would put us up on the roof and like want to record a podcast with aviators and like try to look cool and like talk about social media influencers. And dude, you couldn't make it up. Like I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I hope this guy's doing well now.
It
He tried to
sounds like
get
a
me
Jake
back.
Paul like fucking
Dude, it's
storyline.
one of those literally if this guy had now like the Paul brothers, they have super crazy social skills and stuff like that, like on camera.
Mm.
Like this guy had no on camera. Like he was just so boring, so viciously in his own world and narcissistic and just so boring and doesn't understand perspective, but like totally could have killed it in a lot of areas because
Mhm.
of his knowledge and his kind of mindset. But yeah, so it was a great experience. So that's February. I leave. I'm like, I'm done. March comes around. I said, I'm going to try to get a client, you know? So I'm on Upwork again, right? I was on Upwork a year and a half before this to get this job. Now I'm on Upwork again. Pandemic hits. I go, perfect. I'll be on LinkedIn every day. No problem. That's what I'll do. Like my art side of me just died and my analytical side and business side just grew. And I just stuck to that side of it and just kept going, man. Just kept going on Upwork, kept connecting with people on LinkedIn, kept trying to figure out, is this podcast thing feasible? I call these guys who do this, right? Direct competition, right?
Mm.
Apparently. they're like giving me game. They're like, no, we do packages the other guy does per episode, right? Like, yeah, I'm just getting all this game. Literally, this guy who launched Celebrity Podcast called me and was like, I never do this, but you're confident. You have a lot of confidence, and I think you're crazy. So I'll talk to you. So I got lucky in a lot of ways, like talking to these people. And so that's kind of the beginning of the business. I didn't have struggles other than trying to figure out if this was going to work. And I got a call out of the blue one day after a few months of LinkedIn, right? So still pandemic, probably June, July 2020. And this guy says, you're the podcast guy, right? I'm like, yes, sir. And we still to this day have no idea how he got my number. That was my first contract. It was $100 million door-to-door sales company. I don't think I signed any NDAs, but whatever. It's $100 million door-to-door sales company funding a smaller company who they hired a CEO to run. And that company paid for the podcast to be started. So the podcast was with these B-list celebrities to help promote their pain relief product, right? And once again, dude, I'm working with people who don't understand content. If they would have
Yeah.
had an ads person, if they would have had 5K in ads, if they paid me more than that, if they would have just thrown the same amount at marketing, this podcast would probably be top 100 right now. Like if
Man,
it had the right
100%.
leadership, you know?
I,
So
I always said as well in terms of like doubling down on actual advertising and being able to get like, pinpoint it, and this is where
you don't
like
have to pay for it either. If you do organic, you can freaking murder organic. Like you don't have to
yeah,
even spend money. You have to just know how one of those systems works.
true, exactly. But I think you said there you put it very like politely saying that you got lucky. I don't think you got fucking lucky at all, man. Like as in for context, you've been showing up on LinkedIn, smashing it every single day, like as in engaging, like creating leads, creating opportunities, and this is what you do, right? So Luke Matthews, I don't know, do you know him that well? Personally,
Oh,
you might
yeah.
see him. So he put up
I
a
always try to roast him in somewhat one way or another, so
yeah, he's an interesting character. He's a funny dude, to be fair. He
funny.
he put up a post the other day, and this is very important for anyone who's listening. So we're always talking about LinkedIn, and I'm always talking about LinkedIn, and the reason why is this. I don't have the exact numbers now, but he was going on about how LinkedIn is by far the best platform for generating revenue. The reason why is because the average salary of a user is exceptionally high. It's crazy high. It could be like $60,000-$70,000, right? For the average user.
For the world, that's a lot of money.
Exactly. Um, everyone there is for in inverted commas business, all right? So business in some shape or form. Also, there's only 1% of people that are actually posting and engaging with people. And because of that, we have 99% of people who are onlookers, okay, who just look around. They
Lurking.
still they still lurk, but they still utilize the services. If
Yes.
you're a brand, you're looking for people to help you. If you're an individual, you're looking to be helped by someone, okay? So as a result, this creates this fucking pool of opportunity whereby you compare that to Instagram. You've everyone posting ass and abs. Everyone's trying to get their face in front of everyone, show you my beautiful lifestyle. Oh, here's me in Ibiza. Here's me living in fucking New York, right? And as a result, the penetration rate is really low. Okay, it's incredibly low because we can't actually get that throughput. And you never know, is your content working on LinkedIn? And then just today, I had a very interesting example of this. So, like as I mentioned to you earlier, like I'm recording 5 podcasts in 5 days. I'm absolutely shagged. I'm so tired. I'm very, very low on calories at the moment, dieting really hard. And I was like, you know what? I won't bother put up a post today. And I put a post every day. And I was like, I won't bother put up a post. And I was trying to write one, and my head was fried. And I was like, oh God, what am I doing? Put out a post, put it through Grammarly. It was nice, whatever, put it up. It was about LinkedIn, about building out LinkedIn. About 20 fucking minutes later, I had an invite straight away for a meeting for Monday morning.
Yep.
I did it one post, took me 15 minutes straight away, a meeting straight out of it. And this has been the course for my stuff for the last month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Now, you get into these free consultation calls. Some of them dive, some of them do well, some of them are slow. What's the term in sales? It's like they're not near to buy, but they're like potential like longer
What
term.
Grant Cardone would say is everybody's a buyer.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
he would say, some people would say, why are you wasting your time on this person? He would say, they're a buyer.
and that's exactly it. So even if they're not going to buy right now, but I just thought that was an interesting perspective, especially for this call today, is the fact that like you could put all this time into other platforms, but I think LinkedIn is the one that you can crack some serious amount of cash out of. It's like a fucking hatch, man.
I
Take
wouldn't
it as an
be
analogy.
here without it. Like, I kind of think back to like, what did I think I was doing? Like, did I think I was doing this, that I was going to get clients from this? Like, the craziest experience, I've had a few of them. Even recently I've had a few of them, but the craziest experience was getting on a call with somebody, was them adding me on LinkedIn, no message, just adding me. I messaged them, hey, what's going on? Tell me about what you do so I can learn more about your business and refer people to you, whatever. My intro message, right? Generic. Probably, I didn't even send it.
Good message.
And yeah, that's my intro message is, tell me about what you do so I can refer people to you. Who would
I'm
say
gonna
that,
steal that.
dude? Who would say steal it? It's the best. And I will. Like, I have a CRM. Like, I have the list of the companies. Like, if I need XYZ, then I go to your name and I refer you. So I sent that message. He said, hey, we're actually looking to start a podcast. Can we talk? I'm like, yeah, here's the link. Get on the link. No script, right? No slides, nothing. It's these two guys. They're telling me about their idea for their podcast, what they're going to do. I say, you know the deal. You do this every day. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Who's going to do that? You guys have planning, preparation, production, and promotion, right? The 4 P's of podcasting, what I call it, right? Who's doing all this work? You're going to record. Are you going to do anything else? So the gears are turning in their minds. We get off the call. All right, Ryan, we'll let you know. The next day, how do we move forward? 5K right there. I don't know these guys. I talked to them for 30 minutes. They asked me about what I'm doing. I said, I'm in my parents' garage. I'm running this company. I'm trying to help people launch podcasts, right? They trusted me because of my story, because of my energy, because of the questions that I asked. That is possible. And you could do that every single day, right? And so 100%, like, I wouldn't be here without LinkedIn. Even my first podcast launch with our podcast launch system that we made, I was doing this ad hoc. Like, I didn't have a system. So we developed a system, 5-call system, brought a podcaster through it at cost. This is a guy that I talked to 6 months before. 6 months later, he calls me, hey, I'm going to launch a podcast. Can you give me some tips? I'm like, dude, yeah, like, do this, do this, do that. A month goes by, he doesn't launch it. I say, dude, how about I give you the $5,000 package for $1,500? All you got to do is just go through it and launch your show. Yep, no problem. He brings in another one. That guy, we close in 5K in 30 minutes, right? Because he trusts that original host. So yeah, man, like, that's literally a guy I talked to 6 months before. And then you have the complete opposite end of the spectrum is the guys who I'd literally talked to for 30 minutes who didn't know me from some random guy on the street. And this doesn't happen every day. Like I said, and I told you off camera, like, what we're going through right now, which is a cycle of business. It's just no emotion. It's a cycle of business. You're not going to get a post and a lead every day, Darren, and that lead might be terrible. That person might want to just waste 30 minutes. I know when I get on the call with somebody in the first 30 seconds if they're going to launch a podcast or not.
100%.
And so we're not saying that it's post, lead, close every time. That doesn't happen, right? Like, the grand LinkedIn, back to the LinkedIn influencer, it's magic. Like, Luke Matthews is doing work, dude. Like, he's doing posts that with selfies so more people see it. Like, I don't believe in that approach. I have a different approach. Like, everybody has their own way, but they're popping
100%, man. Man, 100%. That is fucking crazy, though. Like, let's take even a small bit into that because, like,
yeah.
So when you're nurturing this and building it out, like, what's kind of your tactic? Like, what would you advise people? We can abstract from podcasting because we're using that as an anchor because we're probably both doing that in different examples. But if you're going to get on, start this online business, it's going to be service based. You're going to do some sort of agency or some sort of shit like that. How do you do it?
So first, you got to decide who. I think it's more important. This is the thing. Some people will tell you your ideal prospect, only sell to them. No, you can't do that when you're starting.
You can't do that in the beginning, man.
You can't do
100%.
that in the beginning.
You got to bend.
Keep it in mind. Just do it as not a public thing, but as in your head, who's resonating more with me personally, right? And just keep that in mind because that will show you down the line. And then you'll have 5 clients. You'll map out who these 5 clients are, age, demographic, psychographic, right? And then you'll have it. Like the market will just tell you who that ideal prospect is. But I think just keeping it in the back of your head is super important, right? Because you're looking at where I'm going to go. I'm not going to sell to more people. I'm actually going to sell to less people over time, meaning I'm going to sell to a more specific version of a human being over time. So keep that in mind, keep that in mind as your mindset, right? And these are things that I didn't do. So that's why I'm giving this advice, because I think it would have helped me out a little bit if I would have. I tried to go into niches, but I never really fell into one because I didn't want to commit, and I thought I was letting other people go, right?
You also don't know what's the best one in there though, because like for instance, like you were discussing there about like real estate investors or finance professionals beforehand, right? If you just get stuck in one that you're just pissing in the wind and you pick, bear in mind, if you're literally like putting your finger up outside and be like, this is where I'm going,
Yes.
that's when you're
No, you
screwed,
have
right? But
yes. You wanna have the actual data. Like, now I have data to back it up and go, "We
yeah,
took a person just like you and did this," right? And so this is the ideal. Now I talked to somebody. I got an hour of coaching yesterday for free from a gentleman that I met on LinkedIn that was probably worth $10,000. And that's another side benefit of LinkedIn that we can talk about. But what he said is, he's like, want to be you don't want to be the Gary V of X. He said you don't need the general public to know who you are. You need that industry. You need to be the guy in that industry to do that thing, right? So if they go real estate investment podcast, right? I don't want to be Grant Cardone of podcasting. I want to be the very specific, the Chris Walker, the demand gen guy or whatever, right? I want to be in a variable, because even the other industries will want you, because
mhm,
they'll look at your success and they'll sell it for you. They'll go, you did it in real estate investing. Can you do it in syndication? Yeah, dude. It's like apples to apples, dude. So people think that casting the wide net is the best approach. If you cast a smaller net, you'll still bring in people from other industries because they'll respect you for the work that you've done, not just because they're not going to write you off because you did it in one industry and then they're not going to think you can't do it in a parallel industry.
mhm.
Because most people are buying on, personality, honestly, like in our business, right? Somebody
Yeah.
might vibe with you more. I think they should work with you instead of me, because if they really identify with you more, that's a lot of what happens. So I'm kind of giving like a little bit all over the place advice here
No,
because
no,
I
no,
don't have
not at
the
all though,
step-by-step
man. Because
process,
no,
but
because like, sorry to interrupt you, but it just depends on that. It's nice to have that kind of variability, and I'll give you a good example. So, my podcast is always, careers for young people, right? Put it plainly, very very simple. Career advice for young people.
yep.
Um, so I would have a lot of the people that I mentor or coach would be young people. And I used to think that this was going to be an unprofitable business. Bear in mind, I was like, oh look, it's going to be very difficult to get people. Man, I remember hold on, sorry. I remember someone saying to me, being like, I can't imagine anyone putting their hand in their pocket to get career advice at a young age to someone that's young. And I was like, I'm going to fucking show you. I didn't mean that in a resentful way, but I was like, if the service is good enough, right? So I had this ICP, so I knew who my ideal customer was. It was pretty obvious. All the data from my podcast shows who they are, same age demographic, predominantly male. And most recently, someone reached out to me who was head of sales, 10 years experience, head of business development, whatever, and was like, "Look, I know you do a lot of work with young people. Can you give me a help with a lot of CV work and interview work and interview prep?" And I was like, "Of course I can," because I've done it for a certain segment of people. The skills, the benefits are all transferable. The processes are the same. The Google Drive is the same. The templates are the same. We just need to do a small bit of adjustment. And what I need to do is 25 minutes prep beforehand. I need to check what is it that we're looking here. Where's the industry average? Where's the money going? Where's the money flowing? Where's the minds going? Where's the business going? And being able to get that kind of tandem lets me have the confidence. And this is why, in the beginning, you should do everything for free. You should do if you have enough liquidity. If you do, right? Of course, everyone's scenarios are different, but if you do have enough substance to survive, I would do everything for free. And I remember I did so much fucking shit in the beginning, man. I remember I had like 10, 15 coaching people all at once. And I was giving them all career advice. I was doing like WhatsApp messages. I was doing everything, man. And I was finding all their problems. All the problems for careers goes back to the same thing. Young people who are generally educated, are unfulfilled, have no purpose, don't have much desire and meaning in what they're doing. Go to large corporations who give them a petty salary, just enough that they'll stay, and not enough that they'll be motivated. That's the problem statement. And the solution to that then is going back to basics, man. Figuring out what you want to do, figuring out how to devise this, figuring out how to build that personal brand and get that strategy going. But yeah, it's a mad game though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I did the same thing, man. I did just free consulting because, like, I didn't know. Once again, same thing to your point. I didn't know if the market was even there because the market
Yeah.
doesn't show itself to you until you try to get in it. Once you're in it, then you can kind of look at it and go, "Oh, this person's perfect," or "This person's perfect." Like that person that told you it's not going to work, they have no evidence. Obviously, they're not going to tell you it's going to work if they have zero evidence that it could work. So you just went out and got the evidence, and then you're like, well, here's all the evidence. Like, we literally have the fingerprints of the guy who did the crime. Like, it's right here. We can run it. Let's run it, and we'll find his name, and then we'll go chase him down. Like, that step requires you to get in the trenches, get in the shit, and do that free work. And I did it too, man. I did so many free consultations to now have even now my paid consultations are my case studies, which is amazing, which are my testimonials, which is, I thought it was crazy. People have paid me $500 for 90 minutes. Like, how wild is that, dude?
And they love to write about you too. They love to write about you as well and give you those testimonials.
Yeah, without even me asking, they'll make a post about it, and it's just crazy. But you don't have that until you do that initial real research, which requires just basically your time. And this is what and you've probably thought about this too, and I'm a little wary of doing this, but kind of creating resources, because listen, my audience is pretty similar to yours, right? My audience is pretty
you took
similar
the fucking words out of my mouth.
So, and I don't know if you're going to go in this direction, but it's not careers. It's more of like, if you want to do what either of us did and get to that consulting level, can we develop something? Probably a free webinar to start, and then funnel it into one-on-one. But something that is, because we have pretty similar audience. I do have a lot of younger men who are trying to figure out what they want to do. They message me, right? Like, they message you and they say, can you help me? And it's not every day. It's once a month, couple of week here and there. People are going, hey, it's crazy what you're doing. How'd you do it? So I'm like, it's in the back of my head for sure. Hopefully down the line, I'd love to explore that on, like, a super basic freelance, rundown course of how to get your first consulting or something like that. So I don't know. We're thinking out loud here, but
no, you're dead right. So there's an issue. Okay. Issue is this, is that in the consulting service space, if you ever want to do an agency or whatever, you're always capped at time, right? So you only have so many hours in a day. Fucking like Molly May, if you don't familiar with her, you only have 24 hours in a day. But basically, you're capped on time, but also on that, you need to do so much input. There's always intro calls. You need to do the work, whatever. So moving into that digital product and creating a digital product that sits on the internet and sits there is the next happy medium for someone to engage, someone to buy something that you can, quote unquote, wake up in the morning and have money in your bank account, which is awesome. That is actually the best approach. That it takes a little bit more skill, because you need to essentially be able to sell the product before you even you need to sell on its own without you trying to sell it. And for us, the best part of being able to sell something is face-to-face interaction. Also on a call, understanding people's pain points, their problem statement, and being able to solve it. The thing with this is that a digital product is really good for something like a podcast, whereby you can't get your agency package of $5,000. In that case, a course for 150, 200 that does a specific thing seems like a good happy medium. It's hard to get something that's completely correct though, like fine-tuned for that problem statement. So it's a bit more difficult.
Yep.
In a careers context, it seems difficult to be able to even hypothesize what sort of digital product someone would get, because a career like experience is very personalized, right? And I'll give you a good analogy. Fitness plans or fitness coaches will obviously do, like, plans, whatever. Now, those coaches, I had recorded with a guy during the week, was telling me that they could have 100 clients. Man, all they're doing is changing fucking numbers in an Excel spreadsheet for macros, right? But you'll see some of them come out with, ebooks or some shit like this. Those products usually perform really poorly because people are looking for a personal experience versus a random thing on the
Well, they
internet.
don't wanna do the work too. That's the thing.
Exactly. They need someone to hold their hand for it.
Exactly.
So this is a challenge when you're making something that's completely digital. I have been thinking about a few things, and I do have a few things even kind of scoping out at the moment. But it's going to be hard to get really people behind it unless you're able to get your face in front of them first, I suppose.
Also, if you're not gonna make 5, 10, 15, $20,000 on it, it's not gonna be worth it to sell 5 for $100, right? Like, it's just not
Yeah.
gonna be feasible. Like, that's why I don't have a course about podcasting, because there's 40 free ones. I think most of them are terrible, and I think you can't get something, once again, so personalized from a course. But I took a LinkedIn course for $100, and LinkedIn's personalized, but I killed it. Like, I took the
Yeah.
advice and it worked. So it's not like it can't happen. But yeah, that's for the same reason I'm not gonna do a podcast course, because I'll sell 10 of them. I'll make $1,000. I'd rather make 50,000. Like, I don't want to do it until I can literally look at it and be like, this is how many I'm going to sell, like within a pretty determined range. Like, you have to match both. You have a thing that's like, I wish we could teach people to do this, but it's like, okay, now it's not specialized enough. So now let's teach video editors how to monetize or whatever. You'd have to go zoom in a little bit more. But then it's like, are you only going to sell 10 to your initial network? It's like, all right, now we're running ads. Now we have a whole new business and it's taking up all their time. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, you apply the principles that you're already following, like, once again, I'm not gonna go make a course because I'm only going to make $1,000. I'd rather do it when I can make 5,000, 10,000, and I'm trading 1 hour of time I'll get ROI 10x, 20x, 30x, Yeah. And that's a lot of, that's maturity. That's kind of business maturity. I mean, think about it though. Like, as I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, and his book, $100 million Offer. The Game, it's his podcast. Dude, you love this guy. You'll consume all of his stuff if I put you on. He's like, the biggest thing when you're building is saying no, is not jumping on that opportunity that we think is cool on this podcast right now, and just doing what we're already doing. Like, if we just put that energy into our podcast coaching or whatever it is, or our show or our podcast,
yeah.
And I've done the same thing, dude. I've dedicated this time to make these clips, and they're popping off. Like, popping off for me is 2, 5, 10,000 views in the first hour, and then another 5,000 in the next 3 weeks after that. Like, that I've got to that point now, but only because I'm dedicated. Now I've been making clips for 3 years, and they're finally starting to gain traction. It's like, I'm not gonna start a new thing, but that's really my big thing. Like, I have a lot of rules, and so do you. Like, you don't do things on a whim. Like, this is cool. I think in like 4 years, making, 10, 20, 30, 40K a month, 50K a month, let's go 100K a month. Who cares? But then once we can do 4-hour fucking work week, bro, then we'll make some cool shit like this, where it's like, we're literally dump 30K in ads and make 80,
That's why, like, I think when you're not necessarily saying on the fucking climb, but when you're definitely in the mindset of like growing things or building things, you see the different opportunities, and it's easy to get caught up in them. But you need to go back to the basics, as I like, and I thought about this earlier, was like, what is driving the most traction for me from a career aspect, from a podcast aspect, and it's all around my podcast, And I've gone like super deep, man, on videos as well, like as in YouTube editing, YouTube videos. Like, I do
Every
both.
day, dude. You're so consistent too. I really appreciate it.
Nice one, man. But basically, I just fucking I love it though. Like, I really enjoy YouTube, and I really enjoy like my podcast. And now, like, my sponsors are behind it. So
Yeah.
I have a really good sponsor who just take care of everything. They're very helpful. They're
Are
just
you
really
down
good
to talk
service.
about like details about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, most of it. So
I
like
mean,
basically
like how it's set up. So, like, is it a commission? Is it a monthly
yeah. So
fee? Or
how it works is like there's a fee. So you'll get a monthly, like, it's like a salary, let's say. So you just get
got it.
a flat fee.
Just for the
Plus,
ad on your podcast.
exactly.
Got it.
Plus a commission, so commission
Perfect.
on sales. But man, like it's funny because not on my scale, but let's say you're a fitness influencer, whatever. If you're a fitness influencer and let's say you're with a like Gymshark, that brand, they'll pay someone like say 40K a year, okay, and then they'll hit them with a commission, and because those influencers are huge, they could earn up to 100K a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
not a
they
fucking joke, man.
do, bro.
And they
These,
do, man.
they do. It's
The
crazy.
likes of like Steve Cook, all those original guys, yeah. So like when they do like a sale for My Protein or whatever the fuck it is, so that's the scalability aspect. Now, obviously, I am 0.1% at that stage, but what I'm trying to say is that even at my stage, I can see that grow. And I said it to my girlfriend. I was like, to be fair, I've had a good couple of months with YouTube. I will say that, but let's say I'm averaging like 400,000 impressions a month. Okay, with that, I just thought in my head, imagine if I multiply that by 10. Imagine if it was 4 million a month impressions, right? Imagine how much money you can make off advertising, off sales, off your services, right? So this is what I'm trying to say to people is that like in the beginning, when you look at your ad revenue and it's like fucking 8 cents a month, you're like, oh, I might just give up and go back to my job. But it's like if you just stick in it long enough, that'll take off, and you don't need to just be fully focused on that too. So we kind of looked at like saying no to other opportunities, and that's very important. But for me, like I obviously have a background in tech, so I'm not like an engineer, but I have a good understanding of UX, UI, product development, startups, like how to build things, like how to work with people. So I do kind of like romanticize like building my own tech startup, but it doesn't have to be like this super grungy 50 employee vibe. It can just be a SaaS product. It can just be the likes of StreamYard that we're streaming off today.
Yeah.
$9, $27, $37 for a membership. We get it built. It might cost me like 10K to build it, 20K to build it. And then from that point on, unit economics man kicks in. We just need more people to get on. And then at that point, then it's operating pretty well, So I'm kind of thinking like that. I'm thinking like maybe there's a software solution that I can do. And I've been thinking about different things, man. I've been thinking about one for podcast management. I've been thinking about a few different ideas. I've been speaking to a couple of guys about it as well. Speaking with Tristan Pellegrino.
I love Tristan. Dude,
Guy gives me a lot of time.
Yeah.
You met him yesterday?
No, I messaged him. I just talked to him
I
on
messaged
LinkedIn
him.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lovely dude, but he gives me a lot of good time as well. But we're just kind of discussing different things, and teasing it out. He used to be a software engineer for IBM. But yeah, where I'm going with this point is that look, you can go as hard as you want on what you're doing, and just make bank off that. Like that's the benefit of fucking YouTube, man. You can literally make money off anything.
I have a perfect example. I have a guy who I talked to maybe 2 years ago. He said, I have this podcast. It's an equipment rental podcast. How do I monetize it? He's like, he's like, I have a few options. I can monetize the listeners. I can monetize the guests, or I can monetize the sponsors. He's like, which one should I do? I said, all three. Like, definitely. I'm like, dude, I don't really know. Honestly, I remember the call and I didn't have a good game plan for him. Like I didn't have like, you should do this, then this is that. I'm like, you're just in a great position. Like, just so you know, no podcasters in this position. Like the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of podcasters are in this position. And I talked to him 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. He's making tens of thousands of dollars a month from the podcast, was able to quit his day job in that industry to now be the host of the podcast. People are flying him to different places, and that's all I'll say because I don't know how much he wants out there. But basically, he's like quadrupled his income, and he's doing it from a thing that he created in this one industry. So
with his voice.
Yeah, with his voice, literally, and some equipment. And now he literally has the sponsors who pay to be in front of the listeners, and there's listeners who pay to be at guests because they sell to the sponsors. So it's literally like a genius ecosystem of the show.
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Basically, what I was saying there was, I have a friend, who will stay anonymous for the story, but basically, he kicked off like this fucking NFT page, right? When NFT started, and he got like a flashy name for it, whatever. The page went from like 0 followers to 250K. Okay. Just blew up. And the reason why it blew up is because guys would come to them with their art. Obviously, the art looks fucking sick. It's like 3D visuals and stuff. And say, hey, can you just post this on the page? Whatever. And he was a guy, grand. And then people start paying to post on Instagram. So he's getting paid to essentially just post on fucking Instagram. And these guys are paying, man, they could be paying anything. They could be paying at very least a 500 or 1,000 euro a post. And then they're getting like 30,000 likes or whatever the equivalent is. and then he was thinking of starting a podcast around it, and then he was speaking to me about it, and I was like, "Oh, you need to get this microphone and stuff," and he was like, "No, no, 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 no." He was like, "Someone is going to pay me to be the host of his podcast, and then people will pay to be on the podcast. So we have a host who's paying to be there. We also have guests that are paying. We'll have a fucking advertisers who will advertise on it. This is like monetization inception. And then they're gonna put up fucking posts on Instagram to get paid for as well." I was like, man,
Dude.
you're gonna make you're gonna make like 200K a year.
And you know what he did that a lot of people aren't doing? He picked something and he stuck with it, and he didn't change what he was doing, right? NFTs, perfect timing. He had the concept, and he executed. Like, that's it, right? If you did it on, hey, this is a Web3 podcast about everything Web3, you're fucking shot, dude. You're done. It's not going to work.
Mhm.
Like, he went into, same thing with my friend on his podcast. He said this, they said, how much for a sponsorship? He goes, $3K. Okay, no problem. Next company comes in. How much for the sponsorship? He goes, $6K. They go, yep, no problem. How much for the sponsorship? $10K. Yep, no problem. And he's running ads to all the people. So he's like, here's what I'm running ads on LinkedIn to. 60% of them click on it. So like, that's part of the reach too. Like, it's not just the podcast, it's also his email list and also the LinkedIn ads that he runs, like that he designed all by himself. But once again, in this specific industry. So like, even for us, right? The course, like my course would be freelancing for wedding videographers, how to monetize that business or whatever, right? Like if I knew how to do that. Or in my case, DJing, right? Like how to monetize DJing for corporate events, right? Like the zoomed in stuff, because once again, back to the earlier point, you become the person. This NFT guy is the person now. There's a lot of other people in NFTs, but nobody's him, and nobody has that leverage, and nobody has that brand. And so you want to be the person, because then the Web3 people who aren't even in NFTs will go to this guy and pay him as much as he asks for.
Exactly. And he'll end up doing some fucking consulting, man. He was flown around to like Abu Dhabi. He was flown all around the world. And that is
And
absolutely
think too, Justin is a perfect Justin Yen. You're familiar with him, right? College declassified,
oh
declassified
yes, yes,
college.
yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
same thing, dude. Built it off TikTok. Just figured out He's like, I'm just gonna figure out TikToks. Figured out LinkedIn. Okay, cool. I can figure out TikToks. One of the biggest college podcasts in the world. It's the bar stool of actual educational college content, and instead of pure entertainment. It's like, dude, this model is being done and replicated,
Yeah. And then that's what it gets into the kind of area and kind of goal setting, and even just kind of setting targets. Like I actually had a consulting call with someone recently, a coaching call. We were going on about how like not setting like limiting beliefs. That like, you're from, where the fuck are you from? Like fucking Alabama? I'm joking, New Jersey or some
Hey
shit.
man, wait. I'm not from Alabama. No, I'm from
It's
New Jersey. I'm from the
New
border
Jersey.
of. In New Jersey on the border of Pennsylvania.
All right. So we were just kind of, so you come from like a small town. I actually do
Oh yeah.
originally too. And like, there's obviously that small town mentality. Like, you should be just go to school, get a job, happy days, whatever. But breaking out of that mold and really trying to like fucking push on and trying to just get there is all well and good in practice. Like to say this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually do it is another story. And the guy that I'm working with at the moment, like he's very young, making a lot of money in sales, like a lot. He's making probably more money than I am, to be honest. But basically, he he was saying that like he feels bad because he's making more money than his parents already, like 24 years old, 25 years old. And I was like, man, this is when you literally put the foot down and fucking push on, keep pushing on, and try and make like 500K in 5 years, a year. That's what you should be trying to do versus saying, oh, I'm in a great position now, I'm going to slow down. So, like, have you experienced something similar yourself and like trying to, get those extra, extraordinary goals kind of achieved?
Yeah, I've probably, I thought that when I didn't have a 5-year plan, that I needed a 5-year plan. And then I developed a 5-year plan, and then I'm like, this isn't even what I want. Like, I don't even actually know what I want in the 5 years, you know? But for me personally, imagine if you have that job, right? That six-figure job out of college, you're killing it in sales and working 60 hours a week or 80 or hopefully just 40. That would be great. But you're not taking off a Friday, right? You're not, spending half the day with your girlfriend on when she has a day off. Like, you're not able to do that. So that's things that I think about, that like I do take liberties. Like, I do that. Like, it's not all the time, but I do it. But I'm able to do it. Whereas my friends who are in that position where they have a cool 70K a year, they have a new car, they have a nice condo, the whole shebang. They can't even take the Friday morning off or something, So for me, when it comes to like, I was never ever in a position like that where I had like, wow, I'm making all this money. Should I just see it through and just stick to it? Like, it was never that. It was always, how do I make money from what I'm doing? Like, I don't even know how to make money. I still am learning how to make money. I was on another podcast earlier this week, with an accountant who left his job at 33 with a kid and a wife and all that, and just do his own thing. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how to run a freaking business, dude. People look at me and they're like, oh, like in your small town, Sully's the podcast guy, Sully's the business guy. Like, he knows business. Like, even my partner the other day goes like, dude, you're the business genius guy. And I'm like, dude, I am compared to maybe the average person walking down the street, but like, in the scope of this, I haven't barely done anything. So I'm more in the complete opposite position of somebody who's in like a six-figure job, who's like, I can literally see my retirement. I'm in a position where I'm like, how do I make my own? I've been trying to make my own six-figure job just so I can take all of that. I've never taken a check, just so I can take all that money and give it to people. And so it's such a mindset shift. Like, I have people on my podcast, they're like, I would never do what you're doing. And I totally get it, because they have jobs where they literally just enjoy what they're doing, and then they can just go home at 5 o'clock. And sure, a sales job or something like that, that's like being an entrepreneur a little bit, right? Or selling anything is like, has that entrepreneurial vibe. But at the end of the day, like, everybody else set you up for you to succeed here. Imagine you have to set yourself up to succeed and then do the work. Like, you have to build the entire company, then give yourself a job in that company, and then you might not even take that money. You might still be making the six figures net and just give it away to other people to grow the company. So it's just like, for me, it's always been a like, how do I get now in the last year and a half, how do I make my friends a job? How do I create a job for them? Like, I've created the job, but how do I finance it now? Right? Like, what if we have down months? What do I do? Do I go into debt? Do I take out a savings? Like, what's going on? Or we have a big month. What do I do with the money? Do I bank it? Do I cash it? I have my margins. I know I want to save it. Who knows what's going to happen in business? It's like, it's been a journey of trying to create jobs for myself and my friends, and then how to keep them sustainable. And I'm at the point now where I had success because of circumstance and because of the position I put myself in and the work that I've done. But that only lasts so long. Like, the ebbs and flows of life and business, they force you to continue to, you don't reach a point where you're just set. Like, you can reach a point when you're set, right? But it's not going to be 2 years in. For some people it is. That's great, but it's not for me.
But for majority of people, it won't be, man. And it's good to, celebrate successes. Like, to Iman Andrew Gazek, you're gonna fuck up his name again. To celebrate successes when it happens, like small successes as it goes on. But you need to be thinking always about what's coming around the corner. And I suppose that's the game you play, and that's why you bring it on yourself, and that's why, I have to admit that I'm not fully there yet. I'm not fully there at that point yet, completely. And maybe if it's a tech startup, maybe I have to be out on my own, because I can't, possibly build a podcast and do this and do that and do this at the same time. So there's that kind of like mindset shift. But man, think of like the breadth of experience, or not, I hate the word experience, but the breadth of learnings that you've had, right? So like you said there about how to set up an invoice, how to pay people, how to get paid, how to get things to land in your bank account, like all these things, Mark. Like, you literally go to Google. That's literally what I do. It's like, someone asked me how to do something, I go to Google, I try to figure it out, and then I try to get back to them within a reasonable time, so it doesn't look like I was on Google. That's like half of the job of having an online business. You know what I mean? It's like just trying to figure shit out as you go along, and just get it done. But I think you do need that focus though of, you know, where you want to go to. And not thinking 5 years, not thinking that far ahead, because I know that's kind of like for me, what that can be kind of detrimental, because where I'm from, there's a lot of people who will, go to the big city, go to like Dublin or go to like London, spend like a couple of years there, and then just go back to where they're from. It's
Mhm.
like the strangest shit ever. That this is such like this must be like a parental thing that's like deep in like fucking philosophy and psychology about like how people like return home. But like for me, that's just like not my kind of case. My family are very chill. Like they'd obviously like me to be around in Ireland, but this is why I'm moving, and this is why I'm always kind of traveling and stuff. So it's interesting to see how people like leave the nest, come
Mhm.
back, and then they may have these aspects in their business too. They go a little bit ahead, but they ultimately don't push on, and I think that can be the challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've seen, I don't know if there's correlation or causation, but the people that didn't stay around are the ones that are the most successful, at least on paper.
100%. And the reason why is perspective. They'll go away, they'll meet people, and you may even know Simon Ree, yeah, Simon Ree
Yeah,
from
yeah.
LinkedIn. So like my mate Cullum, so who I met, who's one of my best mates, he put me in contact with this guy Simon. Simon's been on my podcast once or twice. I met that guy to record a session, and I just instantly just gravitated towards him. 30 years in Goldman Sachs, started his own trading academy, has has a lifetime of experience and just wealth of knowledge. He's like a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's like the perfect human, bear in mind. And as I told you, I'm moving to Singapore pretty soon permanently. He was the first person to contact. I was like, I'd love to bring you out for dinner. A little thank you for recording 2 podcasts and all the help you've given me over the last year. And just putting myself in that bracket, I always reference it to my girlfriend. I'm always like, fuck, if I ever got like an inch of success that Simon got, I'd be in a great position when I'm older, things like this. And it's because I'm just like always exposed to these A players.
Mhm.
And Nick Haralambos, who was on my show, said this in a very he did an abrupt way on purpose. He said that he doesn't have B player friends. And when he said that, I literally went introspective and thought the exact same. He has no B player friends. He only hangs around with A players. It's a combination of people who he trains with, who he hangs out with, who he works with, who he eats dinner with, all this combination of factors. And he's left with all these people who are strong influences that he's met all around the world, and they push him to be a better person. Um, and that's the reality. I think we all know the guy who's a college footballer who was like an A player back then and then ends up just being like a loser at 25, 26. That's what can happen to you if you just hang around doing the same shit you did when you're younger. And this goes back to the very first time we fucking said at this show.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't burn a bridge with the B guys. I just don't hang
Yeah.
out with them. I just don't
Yeah,
spend time with
exactly.
them because they're gonna come around eventually. It's not gonna be me who makes them come around, right? I'm not out there
Mm.
fixing. We're not gonna be
You're not the
we
life
you
coach.
can't make a B and A. Like if they don't change their mindset, you can if you're like, yeah, like a life coach or some shit like that. But especially who's a life coach at 23 who's killing it, and you do it to an extent, right? But the yeah, I know a lot of my B guys are going to be A guys in about 16 years after they do 20 years in this job that really just sucks. And then they are like, oh, maybe I'll invest in real estate or something. And then they'll get
Mm.
into something that will like propel them. And then at 43, they'll have a successful business or something where it's like, I started this at 21. So a lot of those B guys are going to be A guys, but most of them are still going to be B or go to C. But yeah, but that's, you get people like that. And like I said, like this guy I spoke to yesterday, or the multiple people I've spoke to in all these various industries who are 500,000 a year business, $1 million a year business, $3 million a year business. I don't need to talk to a billionaire. Like people, podcasters or whatever, they're like, dude, I have a billionaire. I'm like, that's the most irrelevant person to me. That
Yeah.
that guy like did what I did like 80 years ago. Like there's no, when there was no internet. So like I'm surrounded by, and I really do try to do that same thing where I at least just keep these people in my network and I just ask them questions and they're like, you're curious? Okay, I'll get on a call with you. Like there's so much game that I've gotten, but I don't even hang out with people. So I couldn't even hang out. A B person couldn't be around me. I don't spend time with people. I'm on the internet, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm making calls, I'm doing business. I have my business, my podcast, my music, my girlfriend, my side job, right? I have 5 things that I do. That's what I do. Like, there is nothing else. There is no, like, I allot this time to hang out with my friends. I don't hang out with them. We don't spend a lot of time together. We'll all get together. We'll spend the time. I love my friends. I consider them all A players in the variables that they are. They're not all in entrepreneurship. Some are,
Exact same,
but
man.
that's how we spend time together because we're fucking grinding. We're working. Like, one of my friends works 30 hours a week and then he works 3 days a week at his job and 4 days a week on his business, landscaping. He has a 6-figure landscaping business with a full-time employee. Like, he's grinding, dude. Like, he works way more than me. Like, he's doing
With his fucking hands.
with his hands. He's not on LinkedIn posting shit. He's working. Like, he's managing people. He's doing the books. Like, he's doing real shit.
Yeah.
Like I said, like, this internet world is literally 0.0001% of what people are actually doing, right? Like, I talked to this guy yesterday. He's like, I get on LinkedIn. I see your posts. Like, I don't get, like, he's like, I'm set for life, dude. He's like, I could stop working right now. I have 3 Porsches. I have a wife, kids, the whole thing. I'm done. He's like, I'm good. I do half days. He's like, I work 4 hours a day. Those are you never know if you didn't talk to this person because he's not out there online doing it. Like, so yeah, I feel you, man. It's hard to find those people, but when you find them, you can really have developed this little network of these kind of unknown people in society, but these people who can really leverage and elevate you. And then when it comes to the people your actual friends, your A's and B's, you're going to spend selective time with them anyway if you prioritize connecting and having these real super A plus people around you, you know?
And you don't need to be like all around sitting around a room like smoking a joint. You can just meet up once a month or once every 2 months, go for a nice dinner. Like, I'm meeting a friend tomorrow night for dinner. We won't see him for a while after that. That's going to be the end of it, on a Saturday
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
That's what happens, man. Let's discuss something around maybe around like the lessons you've learned. So you've been in this game for a long time so far. As a young dude who is 21 starting out, what was some of the hardest lessons you've learned?
Yeah. I think I think delegation is the first, meaning the upsides and downsides of it, right? Because when people tell you, and what I mean by that is having help, right? Like, you're gonna go, if you want to go slow, do it yourself. If you want to go fast and you want to help more people, you got to involve other people. And so that was the first, like, real key in terms of understanding that 3 people isn't 3 times you. 3 people is like 10x. 6 people is like 20x. Like, 18 people is like 100x. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are just made up numbers, but it isn't you have 3 people so you can get 3 times the work done. Like, really, people together create a whole new level of speed and growth, and it can go the other way if you're not doing the right things, right? Or if they don't have the skills. But hiring one of my best friends from high school, who was older than me, a little bit more wisdom, not as much business experience, and then my college roommate, younger than me, understands the business side, doesn't have the experience, but understands it, loves it, super creative. So I have an analytical person and a creative person. And then I have a few editors and stuff like that. But taking the business to this point, I actually realized that I did it too fast. Like, people all say, like, you should delegate, like, you should hire people. But if you don't have, like, I didn't hire people when I was making 10K a month. I hired them when I was making 2K a month. So then I had to go out and find more work just to sustain. And they all believe it, so they're good, right? And I can afford just about to, like, keep them going. But if I were to do it again, I would have gotten me straight. I would have been able to take a check. My paycheck from the business, my 10% or whatever. By the way, as an entrepreneur or business owner, define a percentage of salary that you take. If it's 0, it's 0. But if it's 10, it's 10. Take 10, right? Whatever that is. I didn't do that either. But my salary, I should have been to the point in business where my salary can support me 100%, no questions asked, food, rent, car, everything, not extra stuff, just 100% support, and then have this offshoot of money that you can go, okay, X amount per month. If we just keep doing what we're doing, my guys will always get this, right? And then, hey, if we scale it back, the business still does that 10K or that 20K or that 30K a month just with me. That's what I would have done. That's where people get delegation wrong. It's not delegate. It's delegate when you have the ability to delegate. So, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? So and they worked for free for a year before I even paid them. And then once I started paying them, then that's when things get real. So I don't regret any of it. Like, sure, I probably would have built it a little differently. But that was a major lesson. I can speak on other lessons too, but like this one
Of
has been
course.
the most obvious in terms of it is so amazing to not have to do that other work that now I don't have to do. Like it
Mhm.
has freed me up, but also you have to be able to support those other people so they can do that work. So,
It's a burden too, man.
and this is the thing. People think, yes, people think you create a system, it saves you all the time. No, no, no. Now you spend time on the system. It's just a different job rather than you doing the job. Now you are the system guy. Until you hire a guy to manage that system, you didn't save yourself time. You just switched what your problems are. Now
Yeah.
you're figuring out the system for these people who are doing what you used to do. You just took something that you did and systematized it and brought them in, but now you're managing them managing the system, right?
Mhm.
And then you're managing the person who managed the person who manages the system, right? Like that's how the hierarchy of business goes. So what people get wrong, I think, and I'm going on a tangent, is that people at the top, like the CEOs, like they're like CEOs make so much money. It's like, no, Warren Buffett makes a lot of money. Warren Buffett makes way more on Apple every year than the CEO of Apple. The
Mhm.
CEO of Apple is a decision maker. He gets paid because he makes the best decisions. If you went in that position and made 50 mil, you would be fired in 6 days, in 6 hours, probably in 6 minutes, because you don't know how to make those decisions. Like people get paid for the decisions that they make. And so that Warren Buffett gets paid more because he makes better decisions, right? Like
Mhm.
that's just the facts of the matter. Like everybody gets paid for what they're worth, sometimes more, but it's whatever the market's going to pay you. So anyway, back to that point though, that's really what I learned in the past like year and a half of like, if you delegate, you better know what you're doing and know how to do it and know how to sustain it. And if you don't have like a plan to sustain it, all of your energy and time is going to be figuring out how it's going to be sustainable. And that's a job.
Yeah, man. That's interesting because like I actually was speaking to someone on Tuesday, Wednesday about this. Someone was saying to me, they were like, "Oh, I really want to get into the YouTube game, but I have no idea about editing." And another guy I was with was saying, "Well, you can outsource it." And then he was saying, "Well, actually, no, you actually shouldn't, because what you should do is you should learn how to edit first. You should learn what you like, you learn what you don't like, and then when you have a rough idea what you're doing, then you can hand it to someone else so they can edit your videos." And I looked at that from my perspective. So for me, I obviously was fucking zero on the floor, like revenue with zero in the very beginning. And I had to do everything myself: the editing, the video editing, the uploads, the show notes, the SEO, the LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff, and the YouTube. Um, it was only until and I kind of I've probably probably been a little bit reversed from how you've done it. It was only until I found myself being like, why do I have no time? And is the reduction time that I have justified by the small margin of cash that I'm making? So, like for instance, if you're making, let's say, $1,000 a month and you have zero time, well, at that point, you should alleviate time and reduce your money then to 500 quid a month or whatever. So that's kind of the way I kind of got to, was like pushing myself so hard up until the point
Mm,
that I just can't do this task anymore because it's either boring, I don't like it, or else someone could do it slightly better than me.
yep.
And I'm actually speaking to one of the guys, actually, who was Colin, who was on my podcast before. Great guy, was actually on his too. And we were discussing this about video editing and reels and TikTok and shorts. And like I would be pretty decent at editing. I would say that I do know how to edit, and I just don't have the time for it, right? And I was telling him, and he was asking me, he's like, "How'd you do this? How'd you do that?" And I was like, "Man, go to fucking Fiverr and just get someone else that's better than you." I was like, it's gonna cost you like $100 for like 5 reels, which could last you 5 weeks. And I was like, just get it done. And then he's after doing it, and the reels he's coming out with now are fucking sick. Like they're doing like they did like some he did it one example of like the Truman Show, and it was like a really well edited, like super well done edited video. And I looked at it and I was like, that's what you pay for. and he just took all the time out of it, took all the effort out of it. Some video editor made a great job with it now, and it has paid back in downloads, it's paid back in opportunities, it's paid back in affiliate links, and that's kind of where I'm at, is like max out my potential, and then when I'm done with it, just give it to someone else.
And don't hire a video editor and then edit the videos. Don't hire a video editor to edit more videos, right? Hire a video editor and then learn a higher value skill. Because what people do, and what happened to me too, is I delegated and then I kept doing the same shit. What's the point of delegating at that point?
Man,
right?
I think as well there, like, so the reason I was planning on saying this earlier, I forgot, was the fact that in the podcast game, that guy you were saying about making more money, like, he should, get an editor and get someone to upload his podcast, be a podcast manager with the money, and he should upload more podcasts, 2, 3, 4 a week, and he just records. He's got to hits play, and everything else happens in the background.
I think that's what he's doing. I believe that's what it's not less. It's definitely more, because then more shows, more guests, more money, more ads, more everything. More everything is more everything. And are you familiar with the Iced Coffee Hour?
Nope.
Check it out. 2 things I'm going to give you. Alex Hormozzi's interview on the Iced Coffee Hour. That'll give you both of them. Perfect. These guys, Graham Stephan and Jack Selby, they're 2 hosts of this podcast, in-person podcast, super dope studio. Really nicely set up. They're like, and they released their YouTube numbers. They're like, we made 200,000 this year off of YouTube. And they get a lot of views, right? But it's cool because every time they are asking this guest, like, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? And they're breaking it down. They're like, here are our numbers. And it's like, you have to be, their thing is finance, right? Like, there are like finance people who have a more conversational podcast that also incorporates some finance. They interview millionaires, billionaires, influencers, all stuff like that, but they have this like money first approach. Like, they're always asking how you made the money, right? And it's like My First Million. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that podcast. Like, if you come in with that first and then do everything else, like, this guy came to me 2 years ago and said, how do I monetize this, right? He didn't go build it, then figure it out. He just did it as he went along. And so I think that's a little something too, of like, just keep that in mind. Like, always keep that in mind, because at the end of the day, you want to get paid for your work. And so you don't want to get 100,000 followers and then figure out how to monetize them. Like, man. You know what I'm saying? So, but then there's the course thing where it's like, you don't release your course until you have 200,000 followers, because then you'll sell 10,000 of them and make $100,000 rather than only selling 10 in the beginning. So it's figuring out how to monetize what, when. That's the balance. That's the key. Figuring out how to outsource what, when, right? That's your friend who gets 5 videos for $100, that he makes that $100 back from the videos. If he spent the time editing the videos, he would never be able to contact the company to get the sponsorship, because that freed up his time to be able to focus in on the sponsorships. You see what I'm saying? So even you have a podcast making 200,000 a year, you would look at that's successful. But these guys ask every guest how they made their money, right? They're always looking. It's always that angle, right? And I'm not doing this. I don't ask my guests how they make money. Like, I'm just there for the conversation. But I wish in the beginning, that's another lesson that I learned, where it's like, have money mindset. Don't go out and do everything for money. Just have money mindset and just keep that in mind too. And I think that's
exactly what I do as well, man.
That's what you do. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you, but I said that's the opposite of what I was doing actually. Beginning was, I was like, oh, it's fine, I'm looking to provide some good content for people, and after a while, you're like, wait, what the fuck? I want to make cash.
No, the money was just a factor. It wasn't. You didn't prioritize money. You didn't put money at how important money actually is. You put you put the whole thing, everything else first, which allowed you to get clients. Which, dude, I was making $1,000 a month editing and working 20 hours a week on the editing. But what am I going to do? So what I did was I brought in an engineer. I took 40%, paid him to do the rest of it, and I took my cash on the top and used that time to go make sales. So that's a delegation that I'm not like terrible at delegation. Like, I have delegation that works really well. I have 2 editors that I can make 5x what they charge me. I could sell it for 5x. Like, I still like have proper margins and stuff like that. Like, I have delegation that is successful, and then I have delegation that's not as successful in terms of like the sustainability of it. But yeah, that right. Like, if we both had that, like, more of that return on investment mindset, that can ruin your business just like living in ROI land. But if you just keep that money mindset going, I think that like, you can grow so much faster because you make way better decisions. You'll make a decision that puts you in a better financial position rather than getting making things look better, right? Visually or something like that. Like
It's a
there's so
business
many
decision.
offshoots. It's a business decision because it's a business and we use podcasting as like 100 examples in this podcast already, but like that's a business too, and that,
Man,
yeah.
a big thing on that as well is the amount of people who don't think of their podcast like a business. This is the first question people ask
I
me
never
when I'm on.
did. I never did, dude.
But man, you have to. I had a post about this ages ago, and that's what I said to everyone in consulting calls. Is like, you have to think of it like a business. The overheads, I have my overheads, man, are like $70 a month
Yeah,
for like my actual podcast
me
itself.
too.
They're very cheap. And man, bear in mind, I run like the highest spec videos, the highest spec like quality for everything. Like I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that you can't get higher quality for video conferencing. Like if I could do 4K, I'd pay for the 4K.
Mhm.
But basically, you got to think of it from overheads, potential revenue, margins, input, time, all things like this. And when you start thinking like that, you can start fine tuning it. You of course want it to be fun. You want it to be entertaining. You want to do lots of other stuff like that. But man, like you just got to get down to the economics as well sometimes, So that's the news. I don't want to run too far over, man. I know you wanted to finish up a little bit earlier, so if you don't mind, do you want to give a bit of a small details on where people can find you, your shit, your links? I'll also have all that in the show notes too, so don't be too concerned about it.
Perfect. Yeah, man. Thank you, by the way. This has been great. Both of our podcasts, just
Yes, sir.
absolute killer, hitting on various different topics. Some of them overlap, most of them didn't. So I really appreciate that. So I'm going to plug one thing and I'll have you add this link, which is my podcast with you on my show called Bopcast. You can find that at sullybop.com/Bopcast. That's SULLYBOP.com/BOPCAST. Or just Google Bopcast. It's the first one, Bopcast. My Instagram is under Sully Bop. So if you go to sullybop.com, that has the podcast, Instagram, all the social links. And then I do similar to what Darren does. I help people launch their podcast. We do production. We have a podcast launch system. That's Podcast Principles. We also have a monthly podcast that we release. If this isn't meta, I don't know what is. A podcast about podcasting. So if you're interested in short, no BS, 5 to 10-minute videos teaching you the higher level philosophy of launching a show, the mindset, the technicals, the promotion, the repurposing, etc., that's under Podcast Principles as well. So if you Google Podcast Principles or Sully Bop, you will find anything related to me.
Sick, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I think we should do more sessions in the future like this, man. Freestyle sessions where we just chop shit up, just chat shit.
Because if
come
we
up with
were
some good
on a
ideas.
call, this is what we would do on a call if we were just talking. Like there
Yeah,
is
man.
no difference. We're just like angling it to offer a little bit more value. But yeah, man, I really appreciate the time, and it's just so much fun. And just having like we're in pretty parallel positions. Like you have your job, so it's pretty different. Like I don't have that job. I'm doing this like full time, so it's cool to have like the balance of, well, if I were you, I'd do this, and if I were you, I'd do this, and just having that those and then all of the things that are parallels that overlap too. So you get like these two different types of people in these two different types of situations doing a lot of the similar things. And just it's motivation too, man. Just sheer
And
motivation.
it's also fucking natural, man. Like these sessions are like properly natural. Let me stop the recording. But again, thank you, bro.